My name is Lucian Dervan. I'm a law professor at Belmont University College of Law here in Nashville, and I also have the honor of serving as chair of the ABA Criminal Justice Section this year. And I want to welcome you to our spring meeting and welcome the Criminal Justice Section to Nashville. We began our spring meeting yesterday with a special symposium event related to the important work of our Women in Criminal Justice Task Force. And I hope that many of you had an opportunity to participate in those activities. The day included panels examining topics such as implicit bias, shattering the glass ceiling, and the challenges facing women in the profession. I was honored to have the opportunity to attend yesterday's symposium, and I found the discussion incredibly informative and insightful. As the task force continues its work over the next 2 years, I look forward to all that we will learn from this group and the incredible contribution that it will make in this area. Today, we convene to discuss the issue of criminal justice reform. Before I introduce that topic, however, I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about the important work of the ABA Criminal Justice Section, to encourage those of you who are not yet members to join us, and to ask that you consider volunteering and lending your expertise to the many projects we are currently undertaking as a section. Founded in 1920, the Criminal Justice Section has over 16,000 members, including prosecutors, defense counsel, appellate and trial judges, law professors, correctional and law enforcement personnel, law students, and other criminal justice professionals. The Criminal Justice Section is an incredibly diverse, multidisciplinary group that is uniquely situated to address the pressing issues facing today's criminal justice system, such as those we will be discussing at this meeting today. While many people are familiar with the section through the conferences and educational programming, you should know that the work of the Criminal Justice Section and its membership is incredibly broad in reach, as the section has primary responsibility for the ABA's work involving crime, criminal law, and the administration of criminal and juvenile justice. So in addition to events such as this meeting, our membership works to initiate studies and research, to publish reports and other written materials, to review, make recommendations, and testify concerning legislative, administrative, and judicial proposals, to author amicus curiae briefs filed with the United States Supreme Court, and to meet regularly with the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General of the United States to discuss and advocate for important criminal justice policy initiatives. Our members also work collaboratively in our various committees to create and propose policy resolutions that are considered by our governing body, the Criminal Justice Section Council. In fact, this weekend, the Council will meet here in Nashville to vote on resolutions addressing issues ranging from plea offers related to wrongful convictions to the implementation of the First Step Act. Once those resolutions are passed through the Criminal Justice Section, they go to the ABA House of Delegates and eventually become ABA policy that is used to positively impact legislation throughout the country and as support in judicial proceedings, including before the U.S. Supreme Court. As you can tell from the list of activities, which really is just touching on the many projects that we undertake, the Criminal Justice Section provides its members with a host of exceptional resources and opportunities to engage in the larger criminal justice community. As I alluded to a moment ago, one of the greatest strengths of the ABA Criminal Justice Section is the collaborative spirit created by bringing together members of the criminal justice community with diverse and differing views and perspectives, yet a collective commitment to justice and fairness. From my personal perspective, watching prosecutors, defense counsel, judges, academics, and others in the section work diligently over the years to understand and address the most pressing issues facing the criminal justice system has been one of the great joys of my professional life. And I hope that those who are not yet members will consider joining us in our work, and that those who are already members will consider becoming more actively involved. Let me share with you just a few of the projects our members have spearheaded and are working on at the moment. For 40 years, the Criminal Justice Section standards have guided policymakers and practitioners working in the criminal justice arena. These best practices guidelines and commentary cover everything from urban policing to appellate practice and all that lies between. When the initial volumes were issued in 1968, Chief Justice Warren Burger described the standards project as, quote, the single most comprehensive and probably the most monumental undertaking in the field of criminal justice ever attempted by the American legal profession in our national history. And we continually expand and update those standards. Last year, for example, at the request of the International Criminal Court, we launched a task force to create international criminal justice standards. We also recently convened a new standards task force that will update our sentencing law standards, and another task force that will create standards related to victims' rights. We also utilize the expertise and experience of our membership to weigh in on a host of evolving policy issues. Last year, for example, we convened task forces to examine and recommend policy regarding DOJ charging decisions, separation of powers issues related to marijuana prosecutions, and border searches of digital devices and information of lawyers. More recently, we also convened two new task forces. The first, which I mentioned earlier, will examine the unique concerns and challenges faced by women in the criminal justice community, and the second will examine the role of plea bargaining in our current system of criminal justice. I will also be launching shortly a task force to examine corporate criminal liability, which will consider issues surrounding the appropriate scope of corporate liability, the breadth of respondeat superior, and the role of prosecutorial discretion in this area. It's an incredibly exciting time for the criminal justice section as our membership work to positively influence the manner in which the criminal justice system operates, and I hope that you will actively participate with us in this work. In addition to the policy, advocacy, and best practices work of the section, we also engage in a wide variety of educational initiatives, and I hope that you'll also take advantage of these incredible offerings. This section has traditionally offered a wide variety of webinars on evolving topics in the law, and this year we launched a new podcast called The Just Pod that explores issues important to our membership and the criminal justice community as a whole. Of course, we also host a number of conferences during the year, such as this one. Some of them examine criminal justice generally, and others look at specialty areas within our discipline. These include our Fall and Spring Institutes, the National, Southeastern, London, and Global White-Collar Crime Institutes, and the Forensic Science National Institute, to name just a few. There are many other wonderful programs scheduled throughout the year, and I hope that you will review them on the Criminal Justice Section website. Today, we meet to discuss the issue of diverse perspectives on criminal justice reform. Criminal justice reform has been an issue at the forefront in our country in recent years as bipartisan efforts have materialized to address systemic problems that stretch back in time as far as we can see, and that lead us to ask many questions about where we find ourselves in this moment in our history. Why, for instance, does our criminal justice system impact so many people in ways unseen in countries we consider our peers? You know the statistics well. The United States has less than 5% of the world's population, yet we have almost 25% of the world's total prison population. A 2009 report from the Pew Institute found that 1 in every 31 U.S. adults was within the U.S. correctional system, which includes jail, prison, parole, and probation. And according to FBI statistics from 2017, almost 75 million Americans have a criminal record, which is almost 30% of the U.S. adult population. Further, when people are within our correctional system, particularly those in jail and prison, how do we prepare them for successful reentry into society to become productive citizens and not just another recidivism statistic? We know that at least 95% of all inmates will be released one day, and our approach to incarceration must reflect this fact. And there are countless other questions we must ask ourselves about criminal justice, such as the role of money bail, effective crime prevention and policing tactics, sentencing, victims' rights, plea bargaining, effectively addressing our nation's mental health needs, gun violence, and much more. This is an area that touches the lives of every American, and our panels today will address the needs of our criminal justice system from varying perspectives as we consider the role of judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, academics, policymakers, and others in bringing reform where it is much needed. Our opening panel will consider bail reform and the role of the bench in bringing change. We will then hear from prosecutors about their efforts to further advance their good works and commitment to justice and fairness through the use of conviction integrity units. Later in the day, we will have a panel examining the incredible strides and leadership in criminal justice reform being seen at the state level, something often overlooked during national conversations. We will also have a panel considering the ways that those in the criminal justice community have begun embracing innovation as a means of addressing the challenges they face within the criminal justice system. And finally, we'll consider the new First Step Act and what this means for the future of the larger issue of mass incarceration in our country. As we engage with one another around these topics, I think it is important for us to keep in mind a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The quote is a favorite of mine, and I also know that it is a favorite of one of the great leaders in the criminal justice section, Judge Bernice Donald of the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. For those of us working in this field, these words bring the reminder that change can be slow and sometimes uncertain. But we have hope that the good we find in ourselves and in others will bend our paths towards justice. Consider as an example Angola prison in Louisiana, a place that for decades seemed to offer little hope of a better world or of the possibility of a more just future, but where suddenly the arc of the moral universe has bent, even if only slightly. The history surrounding the creation of Angola prison was unknown to me until recently, and it is incredibly disturbing and distressing. The land was originally a plantation of the same name prior to the Civil War. And after the war, the compound became a prison where inmates, typically young African-American men, were housed in the old slave quarters and subject to a labor system that permitted private individuals to lease prisoners. Over time, Angola became one of the largest maximum security prisons and the largest prison farm in the country, a place that became well known in more recent decades as a notoriously dangerous prison and a prison where the Angola Three were held in solitary confinement for decades. In recent years, however, there has been a shimmer of hope. Angola has gone through reforms in an effort to reduce rates of violence and focus on rehabilitation. And it is within this environment that Angola created what has now become one of the most discussed and effective re-entry programs for nonviolent offenders in the country. Created through a partnership with local businesses, the program provides significant training to inmates through a years-long education and apprenticeship-style program in fields such as welding, HVAC repair, and auto mechanics. Key to the program's success is that a pipeline has been created to help newly released participants secure meaningful employment. I had the honor of touring the program earlier this year, and I met with inmates who felt they had a chance at a new life and an opportunity to contribute to their communities and families upon their return. The program has one of the lowest recidivism rates I have ever seen, currently in the single digits. For Louisiana, therefore, the program is an opportunity to provide new hope to citizens who have traveled down an unfortunate path, while also making their communities safer and potentially saving money because of reductions in the state prison population. If change can come to Angola, change can come to us all if we work to make it a reality. The ABA Criminal Justice Section partnered on a similar reentry project recently in Washington, D.C. In January, the section joined Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser in celebrating the first graduating class from the mayor's office on Returning Citizen Affairs Paralegal Fellowship. The fellowship program is designed to give previously incarcerated individuals the opportunity to gain skills and begin a lasting career in the legal field. Participants are selected from a highly competitive pool of applicants and enrolled in the Georgetown University Paralegal Studies program. Upon completing their studies, the graduates are placed in one-year paralegal fellowships at major Washington, D.C. law firms with full pay and full benefits. Various partners came together to make this project a success, including Macy's and Uber, and for its part, the criminal justice section supported the program and worked diligently to recruit Washington, D.C. law firms to participate in the initiative and accept fellows upon their graduation. One of the moments from the graduation ceremony that resonated most with me occurred as the participants walked across the front of the room to receive their diplomas. As each took those steps towards their new life, people in the audience shouted out in support and to show how proud they were of these achievements. "That's my son," one woman yelled. Another said, "That's my dad." And as I listened to family members call out to their loved ones, I was reminded that those who find themselves returning to our communities from incarceration answer to the name mom, dad, daughter, sister, son, and brother. One of the graduates, Kareem McCraney, said during the ceremony, "Everyone makes mistakes, but we should deem people worthy of second chances." He added, "In giving second chances, we not only see the best in others, we demonstrate our best selves." Bringing real hope for a new start to our mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, sisters, and brothers should be a top priority for all of us. And I'm hopeful that we will see the use of this program and others like it expanded across the country. But it will take time. That change cannot come overnight should not dissuade us from moving forward. As we discuss criminal justice reform and consider where we fall on the arc of the moral universe today, I feel honored to engage in this discussion in my hometown of Nashville, Tennessee. Both Nashville and Tennessee are at the forefront of many innovative criminal justice initiatives as we work to find solutions to the many problems encountered by the system today. For example, we will hear shortly from Nashville Mayor David Briley about the importance of criminal justice reform in our community. Later this morning, we will hear from Chief Justice Bivens of the Tennessee Supreme Court about efforts in the state to reform our bail system. Representative Michael Curcio will discuss in an afternoon panel the work of the Tennessee legislature on criminal justice reform issues, and we'll also hear from Joseph Williams, Director of External Affairs for Governor Lee, regarding the governor's agenda and vision for meaningful criminal justice reform here in the state. This afternoon, we'll also get to hear from Nashville Sheriff Darren Hall about his new mental health diversion program, and from Project Return in Nashville, an incredible organization working to help returning citizens live full and free lives after incarceration. What an incredible time to be in Nashville and to be part of the larger discussion about criminal justice reform in the nation. I'm proud of my hometown and the state of Tennessee for taking a leadership role in these vital issues, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have the criminal justice section meet here this spring to see all that we are doing. Let me end by thanking you again for joining us. I'd like to also thank our sponsors for their support of this conference and the work of the criminal justice section more generally. Their generosity allows us to hold these events free of charge and engage with the criminal justice community in these meaningful dialogues. I would also like to thank the ABA staff who worked diligently and tirelessly to prepare our excellent programming this week. The ABA Criminal Justice Section staff are incredibly dedicated to this work and spend day in and day out on issues related to criminal justice. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge the work of our section's leadership who are here with us, along with our committee chairs and counsel who will be meeting over the course of the Institute to discuss future CLE programs, publications, and policy resolutions. I hope that this week's events in Nashville will inspire you to become more actively involved with the ABA Criminal Justice Section and to lend your energy and expertise to the many projects that we are currently undertaking. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to call to the podium my friend and colleague, Professor Tori Johnson, to introduce Mayor David Briley. Professor Johnson teaches at Belmont University College of Law, and prior to joining the faculty at Belmont, Professor Johnson served for over a quarter of a century as the elected district attorney of Metropolitan Nashville and Davidson County. Please join me in welcoming Professor Johnson.
Well, good morning. For those of you that aren't from Nashville, welcome to Nashville. Glad to have you here. Wish the weather were a little better, but I have a distinct pleasure to introduce someone who I've known for a great many years and who I think is doing a terrific job as the mayor of Nashville. David Briley is a native Nashvilleian. He attended local schools and then left Nashville to go to Georgetown University. And upon graduation went to Latin America to teach, where he became fluent in Spanish. Later, he got his law degree from Golden Gate University Law School in San Francisco and came back to Nashville and started practicing law. But more importantly, he started getting involved in the community, particularly running for council at large, where he was elected and served 2 terms. He was involved in many of the important committees and, more importantly, began gaining a reputation as someone who is both knowledgeable about city government but thoughtful as well. He became intimately involved with the inner workings of government, which only prepared him for his current position. Later in 2015, he ran for vice mayor and was elected. And then just a little over a year ago, March 6, 2018, he was sworn in as mayor and is currently running for election for his first full term as mayor. As an interesting side note, in 1963, the citizens of Nashville and Davidson County voted to combine their 2 governments into one, and Metropolitan Nashville and Davidson County was born. The first mayor of the now combined metropolitan government was Mayor Beverly Briley. Mayor David Briley is Mayor Beverly Briley's grandson. Would you please welcome Mayor David Briley?
That's the first time I've ever heard General Johnson introduced as Professor Johnson, so a little bit thrown off. And I asked for permission from my the city's public safety and justice policy advisor if I could go off script. So I'm only going to sort of follow the script today. So my wife is a criminal defense lawyer. I practiced a little bit of criminal defense a long time ago before I learned to stay out of my wife's area, because she's a good lawyer and I was just a so-so lawyer. But I have kept my license. So Justice Bivens, I have to acknowledge you here today because I may at some point in the future need to appear in front of you again. And I know we've got other dignitaries here too. Judge Donnell, I think, is here somewhere. Bernice Donnell is here from the Sixth Circuit. And I've never appeared in Kentucky, but I may well get arrested in Kentucky at some point in the future. So Justice Minton, thank you for being here today. It's as long back as I can remember, Nashville's really only had 3 district attorneys. And so Tommy Shriver and then Tori Johnson and now Glenn Funk. And Nashville has been very fortunate as a city that doing justice was key to all 3 of them. It was not, that was really the focus in our city. And my grandmother was actually the secretary for the district attorney, and then my aunt was the secretary for the district attorney. So I've been in that office more than once or twice, and a couple of times gotten in trouble myself, but not with the law. And so I don't know. I think a lot about our city and about criminal justice reform here, and we're doing good things here. Our community came together back in November of last year and overwhelmingly asked for community oversight over our police department, and we're in the process of getting that up and running fully. And when Representative Curcio comes later today, you should ask him about his sponsorship of legislation that will preempt our city's Community Oversight Board. Ask him how that fits into the legislative priorities of our state. He has been good to work with, but it's certainly something to ask him about. Additionally, the leadership of the district attorney's office and our sheriff, and in particular Glenn Funk on this issue, we are trying to keep folks who primarily as a result of poverty don't have a driver's license, trying to keep them out of this long-term cycle of further and further falling behind because they can't afford the fees and fines and such. And so that we know that is an important part of it. Here's where I go off script. Yesterday I spent the afternoon in one of our high schools, Whites Creek High School. It used to have about 2,000 students. It's shrunk now down to about 600. It is almost all young people coming from poverty. It has a 45% chronic absentee rate. 45% of the students are not coming to school. And most of them are African American. And so we had this incredible meeting yesterday where we talked to teachers and students there. And as we listened to the students, it was in the word I think we all left with was brutal. And it's because that group of kids are clearly on a path to an encounter with the criminal justice system. Not because they're bad kids, not because they are bad people or their parents are bad, but because our city is failing them in terms of getting them on a trajectory where in the process of going through our education system, they believe, rightly, that they can excel and succeed and be part of this incredibly prosperous city. So I know y'all are lawyers. I'm a lawyer. We're here to talk about criminal justice reform. That is great. But to too great an extent, we are waiting too late. And so we have got, as a culture, as a community, as a city, as a nation, to start focusing on young people when they are coming out of the hospital, frankly, and focusing on their families to make sure that they are I'm going to do everything I can for as long as I'm mayor to put each and every one of you out of work. I'm just going to tell you that because that is just because for all the Band-Aids and fixes and back-end work we can try to do as a culture, it's just not the same as making sure that our third graders can read proficiently, because that is just such a clear indicator of whether or not that young person, when they are 17, are going to look in the mirror and say, I want to go to school today. And so we have got to do more in that regard. Back on script. I hope you enjoy Nashville while you're here. We survive greatly on sales tax here, so there are plenty of places to drink beer. And I can say this in this room, there used to be a saying, arrive on vacation, leave on probation. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just have a good vacation, enjoy yourselves, have a good time in Nashville. Thank you.